Good morning, buongiorno. It's a beautiful day. Okay. So, as part of my series on how I ended up in Italy, this part is my New York City story. I guess it happened in 2013. Would have been the winter. Would have been the end of October, November by the time this happened. But it was kind of at the end of first my Camino experience, and then this other trip to stay with this girl that I fell in love with in Barcelona, Spanish girl. And that's another story that should be cleared up. But basically at the end of that story, I'll start the New York City story, because otherwise you can start it wherever. At the beginning of this story, I arrived at the Barcelona airport with my acoustic guitar, that baggage, and I had no plans where to go. My plan was to go home and regroup and start again. Basically go home and regroup. That was the idea. So I go into the Barcelona airport, look over, there's a counter, an Air France counter, ticket counter just open. This is in the morning. It's like, 9, 10 in the morning or something in Barcelona. And I go in there and I go over there to the lady, and I'm like, hi, and I say, I need a ticket to Kansas City. And she was like, Kansas City, we don't fly to Kansas City. And so I was like, well, where do you fly to? She said, Minneapolis, Atlanta, Chicago, New York City, Philadelphia. She was going through the list, and I heard New York City because I had never been there before. And I had my guitar. I have money in the bank with my debit card, so I'm like, why don't we go to New York City for a couple nights, maybe? I can do some open mics or something and check out the city and whatever, make it on home from there afterwards. So I said, New York City, okay. So she gives me my ticket. It's in like 12 hours or something. Maybe it was 8 hours. It was either 8 or 12 hours. It was a long time. But I was like, okay, I have a ticket. Cool. Let's go relax and enjoy the airport and just spend our time waiting for the plane. So I go to a cafe, order a sandwich and a beer. I remember when the guy asked me for the beer if I wanted a small one or a big one. And because of the events of the previous evening, which led to me leaving in the first place, but this is a whole nother story. I was in my mind, like, I don't have a problem with drinking. I will take a big one. So I had a big one, and I sit down, and I'm having my beer and drinking and eating my sandwich. And as I'm sitting there, this guy, I'm kind of on the edge near where people go by, and some guy comes by and he's frantic and he's like, my wife's at the bus station or something, I can't get to her, like, no, he's freaking out, crying. And obviously at the end I knew he wanted some money, but then I was like, maybe this would be a chance to level out my karma a little bit from the previous evening. And so I got up from the table. I said, okay, wait a minute, I gotta go to the machine to get some. So I go over to the ATM machine. It's just around the corner. And as I'm going over there, I'm thinking, okay, I'll give this guy $30. I don't know why I thought that. That was just the number that came into my head. I was like, that'll help him out. He'll be able to do this or that and whatever. So I go to the machine to get the money, and it's 20s. So it's, or I give him $20 or I give him $40. And I had this little moment of like, and I was like, no, I'm sorry, guy, $20. So I get $20 out, give it to him. He's, oh, thank you, very thankful and nice. And it was a pleasant transaction, I guess. In the end, well, so then I go back to the table and I sit down and start eating my sandwich again. And in just a couple seconds, I'm like, oh no, my debit card. I'd left it in the ATM machine. So I like run over there, jump up, run over there, and it's gone. It's one of those that suck it inside. And if you leave it there too long, it sucks it in and you can't get it out. And so I'm kind of a little freaking out a bit, just like, oh no, what am I going to do? I think I had a couple euros. I must have had €2 at least, and maybe some other change. But I was definitely, I had a ticket to go to New York, but now I don't have any money or any credit card. So I'm like sitting around while I'm waiting. I used one of my euros to call the number on the payphone, because, oh, by the way, I just don't have a cell phone, if I hadn't said that yet. I used one of the euros to call the number on the ATM, and they're like, no, sorry, we don't service it, and blah, 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 on these days, and you have to be the, and it's not like, even if the guy's servicing it, I can't be like, hey, can I get my card? But I tried. The guy that actually picked up the phone on that call, I remember his name was Santiago, which was bizarre, based on the rest of the previous story. But anyways, so I'm sitting kind of next to the ATM again, just, who knows, maybe somebody will come by. And after a while, some tall, blonde German kid with a bunch of luggage, like, sits down kind of close to me, and he's waiting on somebody too. He has a long wait. And after a little while he's waiting there, he asked me if I can watch his luggage while he goes to the bathroom and stuff. And I say, sure, and whatever. So then he invites me out for a smoke, which I hadn't started smoking yet. This was when I started smoking. So we go out, and he has a bunch of tobacco and papers and filters and makes roll your own cigarettes. And so he makes me one, and we sit out smoking and talking. And so I start telling him my story and situation and how I ended up where I am and what happened to my card. And so we become friends. His name's Davide, and anyways, David. And he's waiting on a friend to come, and then they're going to fly to Granada and work on a woofing on an olive farm. So we hung out for a while, and at some point he bought me a coffee, and I think later he had some leftover sandwich or something that he gave me. And again, everything like that was great, was super thanks. And actually, finally his friend came and hung out with her for a little bit, and then they finally left. But when he left me the whole thing of tobacco and papers and filters, and that's when I started smoking. One thing, I had nothing else to do, so it gave me something to do and stay awake. And again, thanks for the coffee. But anyways, that was the night in Barcelona airport, and then finally got on the plane. And, that was a little bit of, okay, you have some food and water. And again, I'm starting to think and plan and say, what am I going to do when I get to New York City? I just wanted to add one little bit to the part right before I got on the plane from Barcelona to New York City, and this was right after David had left already. It was getting a little late, and it was long, and so just waiting for the plane. So at some point, I did have the idea to search for a lost and found at the airport, and I went to find the lost and found. And as I was going there, I was on some stairway on the way, and some old lady came crying to me then and wanted money, and I couldn't really understand what she was saying. I think she was Spanish or something, but in that moment, that's when I had €2, and one of those I spent on the phone call. And so I had really my last euro, and I ended up I was like, you know what? Here you go. And I gave it to her. I think that was after David left. It could have been before, but that was about the only thing I could do at the airport to try and find my card. And then when I got to the lost and found, no luck. But I thought it was an interesting moment there, standing with that lady. She's crying, and I'm like, I mean, your last euro, at some point you think, whatever, I don't have anything anyways. She seems like she could use it more right now, so. Anyways, that was an interesting little moment, especially considering what came next. I arrived in New York City at 10 o'clock at night at JFK. I had no credit card bill, no credit card, no debit card, no cell phone, no hotel reservations, no contacts. No one was expecting me. No one knew I was there. My plan at this point was, okay, I have money in the bank at U.S. Bank, so I'll just get to New York. I'll find a U.S. Bank. I'll go in, do what I have to do. I had my passport still, and that was it. And for luggage, I had my acoustic guitar. I had my aunt's old luggage with just I had one painting in it, some random art supplies, and maybe one other shirt. But no real luggage, no money. When I got there, I think it was like 27 cents in my pocket. And so, again, my first super optimistic hope was, in the airport, there'll be a U.S. Bank terminal, outlet, whatever, branch, and I can go there. However, I arrived, looked around. Of course, it's 10 o'clock at night, so everything's closed anyway. So even if there had been, I would have been out of luck. And start kind of finding my way to the front, to the door, and deciding what to do. At one point, I did ask some guy that looked like he knew what he was doing from there. I was like, do you know how to walk to the city? And he was just like, walk to the city. Ha! And walked off, and that's all he said. So I was like, okay, so maybe it's not completely viable to walk from JFK to the inner city, I guess. So I thought, whatever. During that time, I kind of understood that, to take the train from the airport to the subway, it cost $5, and of course I didn't have anything. So I was like, too bad. So my plan at that point was, let me just stay put. I've slept in airports many times, so at least on that level they feel relatively safe, and no matter how uncomfortable they might be, it's something you can do if you have to. So I was like, let me just sleep here tonight. Then in the morning, I'll ask. I had booked with Air France. That's the ticket that I got from Barcelona to New York. I was like, let me ask them. Maybe they can just use my card that they have on the system and book me a flight from New York to Kansas City, and I won't have to, whatever. Maybe I'll just get lucky. But that was the only idea I had, so I was like, okay, well, so go to sleep. So I have a pretty miserable time sleeping on the floor, moving from there to some chairs that were here and there, and I'm, doing that kind of quasi-sleeping, quasi-not sleeping the whole time. And I remember at some point it must have been close to like 6 in the morning, the sun was coming up, and at this point I was sitting on a bench of seats, and there was a guy sitting just one seat down from me, kind of dressed in a business suit and looking pretty nice. And he had some luggage there, and at some point he woke up, and someone had taped a note to his leg, and he looked over at me and he was like, "Did you see who left this? Who... Did you see them come by?" And I was like, no, I didn't see anything. And sorry about that. So anyways, we start talking. Come to find out his name's Muhammad. He's from Libya. He's been living in New York City, and he's getting ready to go back to Libya for good. I start kind of telling my story, how I ended up there, the situation I was in. I was waiting on my ticket window to my flight carrier to open up, and told him the whole thing. At some point he invited me we went to Dunkin' Donuts, and he got me a coffee and a donut. And again, when you have $0 for an extended period of time, those types of little things really mean a lot. And I don't know if the people who got them for me realize how much they meant. But anyways, we had a really nice conversation. Obviously talked a little about religion, because when I realized he was coming from a Islamic country, we talked about that. And anyways, after that great interaction, at some point his flight was getting ready to leave, and it was leaving before my ticket counter opened. So as he was leaving, walking away, he was like, "Here, I wanted to give this to you." He gave me a $10 bill. He was like, "I'm not going to need dollars anymore where I'm going, so if you want, this will be enough to get me into the city." He recommended, if you're looking for a bang, try Fifth Avenue. I'd heard about these places before, and so I was like, sounds good. Thank you so much. And then he went off back to Libya, and I've actually never seen or heard from him again. But great thanks out to Muhammad. That was a huge help. So after a little bit, after he left, my ticket window opened, and I went back and asked them, "Do you guys have my card on file, or is there anything you can do?" And they say, "No, sorry, we just have the last four. We can't help you, sorry." So I was like, well, I guess that means I'm going into the city now. So basically took my $10 and got a $5 ticket from the airport to the subway. And then the subway ticket, that's when I found out the subway ticket at the time was $2.50. So I was basically spending $7.50 of my $10 already just to go into town. So as I'm looking, got on whatever line I'm on, I don't even know, but for sure I could tell that it was going down a line to an end of a line, and basically the end of the line of whatever I was on was the World Trade Center. And with my history of the military and kind of I would definitely say how 9/11 affected me, and as others, I was, that was definitely a place, came to life. Anyways, I thought, okay, let's go all the way to the end of the line, get off at World Trade Center, and check it out, and then I'll walk and work my way back looking for my bank, as I do. Seemed like a solid plan. So anyways, I waited all the way to the end, got off at the World Trade Center. I walked out, and I don't know what I was expecting, but obviously to join the military, and in the majority of my life leading up to then, I had been very patriotic and, love with America, and these types of national things of national pride really meant a lot to me. I got out and I looked at the memorial, and I don't know if it was because I'd just been in Europe before that or what it was, but I was severely let down. I was disappointed, almost turned off by it. It just seemed kind of like garbage to me. I don't know. It's like, wait, this, just cement area, it's I don't know. Anyways, I just got off, stood there thinking like this for a little bit. Then I turned around, and directly behind me, there was a lot of land with a gate that was open. You could go into it, and there was a church in the middle of this lot of land with trees in the middle of the city. And there's a cemetery in the lot, and then the church in the middle of and I was like, what's this? So I strolled in. I believe it's called St. Peter's Church, and I think it's the oldest running building in New York City, and they used it, during the 9/11 thing. They used the church for, put people in beds, I guess, take care of people and stuff like that. Like, it's just been constantly there. So I walked in to the church, looking around, and they were having coffee and pastries just free. There was a bunch of people in there milling around and talking, and so I had some coffee and pastries, and I was like, wow, I was looking at the church, and it was beautiful, amazing. So after my coffee and pastry, I was like, well, okay, I guess I better get to looking for my bank now. So I walked out to the street and started walking around, just keeping my eyes open, and I was trying to make it to Fifth Avenue. Basically walking, and at some point I passed a street where there were some Jewish girls on the street handing out little packets of hummus and some kind of crackers or something to go with them. Maybe it was pita bread or something, but for sure hummus. And so again, I sat there and said thank you and ate that. And again, these little things just coming to you, the pastry at the church, the Muhammad, this really keep you going. Like when you have nothing, I can't just decide, oh, I'd like a coffee now. It's like, no, good luck. But anyways, as I'm walking, I remember walking past Rockefeller Center, and again, after being in Europe, I was not superly impressed just with the, with anything really, the architecture or the feel or this. There is, again, a real feeling of, oh, this is New York. You're in New York, so maybe with all the films and stuff, there's an energy there, but, there's energies to every big city, and some big cities have this energy plus being incredibly beautiful. Anyways, at some point, I ended up in the middle of Times Square, packed, and I'm standing there with my guitar. And I'm still looking for, by then, I still haven't found any U.S. banks at all. I haven't seen a single one. And I'm starting to get a little, lose a little hope here. Like, okay, what am I going to do? And I remember standing there in New York, in Times Square, in the middle of all these people with my guitar. And I'm like, am I desperate enough to start playing right now? Like, do I need to start playing right now? Is that which is very interesting looking back, but in the moment, I wasn't quite. So I kept going. At one point, I did spend $1 on some street vendor was selling these little chicken, or I don't know if they're chicken, some meat on a skewer. I got one of those for $1. And that's the only money that I spent, so I was basically back down to like $1.50. And at some point, I got the idea, okay, go into a T-Mobile store. No, it was a Verizon. Go into a Verizon store and use the display model to Google U.S. bank locations in New York City. I was like, oh, genius idea. So I go into the store, Google it, and there's 3 of them. So I memorize one, go out, walk down the closest one, walk out, go down, look for it. Find the location, there's no U.S. bank. So, okay, go back to the Verizon wireless thing. Google it again. Second one, okay, memorize that location, go find it, get to the location, no U.S. bank. So, okay, go back, there's another one. There was a 4th location in New York, but it was on Wall Street, and I was like, I think I even talked to somebody there. He's like, yeah, you shouldn't go to Wall Street. I had kind of long hair at the time, too, and a beard. Yeah, he was like, don't go to Wall Street. But I kind of understood. Anyway, I assumed it was a corporate office anyway. So the last and the 3rd location, I search, get the location. I go there. This time there is a bank there, but it's not U.S. Bank. It's something else. So I'm like, fuck. So I just go inside, and I talk to the girl at the counter. I'm like, look. I tell her my situation. Hey, I don't have any money. I have money in the bank, but I don't have my debit card. I have a passport. All I have is my passport. Is there anything we can do? Like, can you contact the bank and maybe do a transfer or something? She's like, no, well, sounds like you're really in a pickle, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, thank you, I guess. And so anyways, basically, I walk out of that bank totally dejected. My plan at that point was done and hadn't worked, and I was back to square one. As I would step out the door, there was a guy sitting on the street side. He was sitting down there knitting hats and scarves and gloves and stuff, crochet style, and had a little sign that said to go home. And people were giving him money, and he seemed happy, and I was completely defeated at that point. So I just sat down next to him and was like, hey, what's up, man? And so I started talking to him, and he was, I don't know if he'd come back from Costa Rica or something, but he was trying to go back to Indiana, and I'm not exactly sure what his whole story was, but he was a super great guy. And he started, giving me clues of the street. Then he's like, I was like, so how do you do this? He's like, well, first you got to get a cup. And I was like, how am I supposed to get a cup, man? Like, I can't even afford to buy a coffee. And he's like, duh, go look in the trash. Like, there's lots of cups to find. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So we got to start thinking a little differently here. Then he's like, you need to make a sign, because I guess signs just help with that kind of thing more than not having a sign. And then he's like, and you need a little seed money. And he actually gave me a $1 bill and a bunch of coins for seed money, again, which really, we're talking about a guy on the street here that is doing the same thing I'm doing, giving me money to just get started with no expectation. There was no way to get a hold of him after this. There was, he did mention staying in the homeless shelters, and I was like, that still sounded pretty scary to me. Mainly, to be honest, I was worried somebody's going to steal my guitar, but anyways, he told me about a bus that was also some kind of flex bus thing that went from New York to maybe Philadelphia and maybe Columbus, like a few spots for pretty cheap. I don't remember if it was like a $20 ticket or something like that, but it would go pretty far for not much money. So then I was like, okay, sounds good. I'll go make money on the street and save that money and use it to buy one of these tickets to get closer, because by then I had also gone back through Verizon and done some better research, and it seemed like there might be U.S. banks in Columbus, Ohio. So anyways, after talking to him and getting my cup out of the trash, I had in my suitcase a little cardboard piece and a pen or a pencil that I used to make a sign. I said to go home to Kansas. And through all my walking around looking for the ATMs before, I had kind of, I'd been scoping out some spots. I'd like, oh, this would be an easy, nice spot to busk. So I found this one spot on the side and sit down, put my cup out, my sign, and just started playing. And lo and behold, people started putting money in my cup. And it was very surreal before. I had, one little moment of busking on the Camino before, but this was the first real, and, let's be honest, it's right on the edge of just straight up begging. I mean, I feel like it's maybe a level higher, just in the aspect that you're offering something in the way of music versus, if you're just sitting there with your hand out. But it's, they're really close cousins, and there's a feeling of being on the other side of that when somebody walks by and, puts $1 in your cup and you have no money at all. Like, I don't know how everybody can experience that, because I would not want you to be in the situation where you would need to do that. But maybe if you can just do some kind of thought experiment and, what is it really like? And for me, I was, utterly grateful for everybody that left anything. Somebody left a slug, but even that, whatever, I'll take it. But then, after a little while, I hadn't been out there probably 30 minutes, some guy came by, and he was like, hey, I'll give you $15 if I can take your photo. And I was like, really? Sweet, take as many photos as you like. And so I just kept sitting there playing, and he took a bunch of pictures, gave me $15, and then left. I was like, sweet, that's awesome. Then, within about the first 45 minutes, some other guy came by, and he was like, I'll give you $25 if I can take your sign. And the guy had told me how important a sign was, but come on, I was like, sweet, sounds great. So I had, over $45 within 45 minutes of sitting there just playing random songs. I'm not even sure if I remember anything, just probably a lot of originals and random noodling, but I had all that money and I was like, wow, just in this short amount of time. And it just came to me like that as soon as I started doing it. And I played a little longer, made a little bit more, but not much. It was trick and probably without the sign. And then it was getting dark. And then some old guy, like a career homeless guy, came along. He was bearded and, pretty dirty and had an old beat up guitar. And he sat down next to me and he just started giving me the ways of the street again. He was telling me, he kept all his stuff in a locker in Central Station, and he was like, you can play in the little vestibules going to the subway. That way you stay warmer, because I was out on the street, and so he's telling me where you can, you play throughout the day. But then he starts telling me kind of the seedier part as far as like where do you go to the bathroom? That's a question. When you're in the, if you're homeless and don't in the middle of nowhere out in the forest, you can just go wherever you want. But in the middle of a city, you can't just, when I have money, even in the city, it can be difficult. And then I like to go purchase something at a cafe to then use the toilet. And sorry to say, but you're going to be, if you're homeless and you're going to start stinking and everybody kind of knows you're homeless, they don't want you coming in to use the restroom. It is what it is. So, finding a place to go, that's one thing. And then number two, the biggest probably, is finding a place to sleep. And he was telling me, don't lay down over here, don't go to sleep over here because the cops will come arrest you. Basically, you almost can't fall asleep anywhere. He was trying to give me some tips, like if you stay sitting up, but I'm like, I tried sleeping like that for a little bit somewhere. We were in Grand Central Station, and actually there's a bathroom in there, so I used the bathroom there. But for sleeping, he was like, and don't go to sleep on the trains. Like, you can't even get a subway ticket and just ride the train and sleep. They'll arrest you for doing that. So I was like, what in the world? And it's getting cold too, by the way. It was not nice weather. So I was freezing. I wasn't dressed for it. Didn't have a coat. And so I was like, well, let me go back to the airport. I had, around $45, something like that. I was like, I'll take this money. At least $20 will get me there and back in the morning. And I can buy a little breakfast maybe. And now I know what to do. Because also the old guy was telling me too. He said, hey, today is terrible, actually. It was the day of the New York City Marathon. And he was like, don't worry, like, whatever you made today, like, you'll make double that, like, no problem. And so I think he was making a lot of money, actually, as well. Just had no house, paid for I didn't even have to pay for it. I had a locker key, and just kept his stuff in there forever. But anyways, and they talked about the shelters too. A lot of the guys were going to shelters, and that might have been an experience and built some empathy as well for them. But I wasn't ready to do that. That did not sound. I wasn't desperate enough to do that. quite yet. Because my idea then, after I tried to sleep in Grand Central Station a couple times, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to the airport. Because, again, I feel comfortable there. And sleep. And then when I wake up in the morning, I'll get a good start to the day. And I should be able to make tons of money. And then I'll buy my ticket. Everything will be fine. Anyways, I go back to the airport. Same terminal that I was in. Try to go to sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, I don't know if it was like 3 in the morning or something, but the cleaning crew comes through and they're like, get up, you gotta go. And I'm like, I did lie. I was like, I'm waiting on my flight. And they're like, no, you're not. You gotta get out of here. And that's when I kind of realized, like, okay, you know, a couple days ago I was a traveler and I probably smelled like it. Now I am a homeless guy and I smell like it. And they're like, no, get the fuck out. And so anyways, I had to transfer terminals in the middle of the freezing night. And I was getting I was over it by then, thanks to the cold and the lack of sleep. That will really mess you up in any situation. And so I went to the other terminal, but I was like, okay, when I get up in the morning, I'm going to call my sister, see if she can get me a ticket to come back. I'm like, you know, this has been fun, but I want to get out of here. Because luckily at JFK, they still had payphones. This was 2013. They still had payphones in there. It was crazy. So when I woke up in the morning, I went to McDonald's. I remember having some kind of breakfast there, maybe even pancakes. But I ate something, and I changed a bunch of my money into only quarters to use the payphone. I think I called my mom real quick and said, hey mom, do you have Stacy's number? Because I only memorized my mom's number, but I didn't want to tell her exactly what had happened yet, or try to explain on a payphone. Anyways, I called my sister, and I was also, I appreciate what she did, but I was, you know, it wasn't an emergency at the time. And a lot of people that see it and hear it, and when she did, and I think most of my family at the time, they reacted like, you're in an emergency. And I'm like, I'm actually fine right now, but I need a ticket. And I was like, get the cheapest one, you know, I can wait another day or so, and whatever. I don't know what she got, but it was later that day. So I was like, okay, thank you. And so then I waited to get on the plane. It was an American Airlines ticket. At some point during that day, I was waiting, and there was some guy outside smoking some weird herb from, I think it was from either Qatar or Abu Dhabi or something like that, but he had this tiny little pipe, and I don't know, I smoked a little of it, but didn't seem to do anything for me, so I don't even know what it was called, but we talked for a little bit, and things, you know, seemed to be kind of looking up, I guess. Then later, I go to get on the flight, and I'm standing there in the JFK lobby, walking through the American Airlines desk, and I have the little luggage still with a painting in it and some random stuff and my guitar. And as I'm going to get onto the plane, the lady's like, that's going to be $25 for your luggage. And I'm like, wait, what? She was like, yeah, we have a $25 luggage fee. And I'm like, I don't have any money at all. And luckily, it was this black lady, super nice, because who would do that normally? But she was, normally people would just say, well, sorry. But she was like, started scanning the lobby. And then she looked over to the restroom doors, and there's the janitor cart parked outside the restrooms. The janitor was in there cleaning, and she was like, why don't you go over there and get one of those trash bags and just put all your stuff in a trash bag and carry it on. If you do that, we can't say anything. I was like, okay. So I went and got a trash bag and put all my stuff out of the luggage into the trash bag, and I have this giant silver see-through trash bag I'm carrying around with my acoustic guitar and all my stuff in that. And so then I get on the plane. We fly to Chicago. Same thing when we get transfer planes. I'm walking through the airport with this trash bag. We get on that plane in Chicago in the middle of the night, and we're going to go to Kansas City, and then that plane gets grounded to mechanical problems, and luckily they paid for a hotel. So then I'm sleeping in a hotel that night by myself, and again, my mind's a little messed up, just like, what in the world just happened? I just, a couple days ago came from Barcelona. All this happened. It was just a little, whirlwind, a lot to take in. But, slowly I came back and made it back to Kansas City. And that's when I started smoking a lot of tobacco. Roll your own cigarettes. Just in that little period after, I smoked a bunch, and it's tapered off since then. But I guess that was my New York City story. Originally, I guess when I tell you the part of how I decided to go there, I was hoping to do open mics and stuff, but in the end, I got to experience a little busking, and it definitely, that combined with seeing the world on the other end of the receiving of kind of being in a beggar's position, and knowing what it's like to have no money, even if just for a couple days. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but at the same time, the little period that I experienced it, it was, I constantly had something in my mind, some kind of next step or something to do or a plan. And I was constantly moving and working towards that, because there was nowhere to sit down. There was nowhere to stop. So have an idea and go see it through. It might not do anything, but if anything, at least it will probably lead you to the next idea, which is kind of how those things seem to resolve themselves. Anyways, I love you all. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.